expect the likes of Marcus Rashford, Rasmus Højlund, and Andre Onana to leave Manchester United permanently in the summer. We know that Casemiro is leaving, but other than that, we're not sure. Maybe Ugarte will go. There's been a few rumours about him, but it looks like INEOS are ready to be ruthless. It looks like INEOS are ready to sell players that, to be honest, I thought probably would not go in the summer. We're going to talk about the latest news on the likes of Mason Mount, on the likes of Diogo Dalot. We've also got news updates on Toby Collyer, news updates on Leny Yoro, and the new defensive coach coming in. We've been rumoured we've been linked again to Mecha of Borussia Dortmund in midfield. We're going to talk about Omar Barada. One thing we do know about Omar Barada is he has this sort of 2 years and you're out policy. If you've not shown enough by your second season, he wants to get rid of you. We saw that with Onana. We saw that with Højlund in the summer. But a few more players could be impacted by that if they've not hit the standards. We know Ugarte is also very likely to leave and has already been put up for sale, pretty much, according to many sources. But let's get into all the latest Manchester United news. Let's get into all the stories coming out today. But of course, if you do enjoy today's video, feel free to hit that like button. And you're welcome to subscribe if you're new, because every single day on the channel, I do a 10-minute video where I round up all the latest Manchester United news for you guys. So just going to start with this story as it's a little bit off topic, get it out of the way, and then we'll get into the other news stories. And that is that Toby Collyer will miss up to 3 weeks due to a new hamstring injury that he picked up ahead of their FA Cup tie with Chelsea. Toby Collyer, for me, I think there's a really good talent in there. I think there's a really good player in there. And I think he potentially could be a beneficial player for Man United in the future. But what's letting him down is those injuries. He's not being able to get around the games because of those injuries. And this was a season where he really needed to have a good year in the Championship to maybe push for a Premier League low and have a good season in the Premier League with a mid-table team. And then the following season, you think, we need midfielders, we need depth, he could be that guy. But it's just injury after injury for Toby Collyer, out on loan at West Brom, out on loan at Hull. And I feel for the guy because I think there's such a quality player there, but he just can't get any luck. Now, let's talk about INEOS's potential ruthless plan of sales. I'm going to talk about some of the names that could be sold this summer. So it first of all was said, and we spoke about the story a little bit yesterday, that Manchester United could look to sell Mason Mount for around 20 million this summer to cut losses. Now, there was talk of the fact that now we're going back to a 4 at the back and a 4-2-3-1. Mount's not going to get minutes because he's competing with Bruno. And you know what? We need elite squad depth. Mason Mount as a bench player for Bruno Fernandes is good squad depth. Mason Mount on 300k a week sitting on the bench is not a good use of funds. You want squad depth. You want good squad depth. You look at Arsenal. They've got Calafiori and Hincapia. They've got Saliba and Mascara. They've got Odegaard and Eze. And you can even argue Mourinho. They've got Gyökeres and Havertz up front. They've got Saka and Madueke, who spent 50+ million on, who cost more than Mason Mount, I believe. I think, I wouldn't sell Mason Mount because he's not going to play as much because we've got Bruno. I would sell Mason Mount because he's not reliable, he's injured, and he's on high wages. Mason Mount, for me, is really good bench depth. Mason Mount, for me, is a very good player. I like Mason Mount. If Mason Mount was guaranteed to stay fit and he was on 150k a week, I would not sell Mason Mount. I would say this is a really good backup for Bruno. He presses, he can bring something unique. But because of Mason Mount's wages, because of his injury record, if someone comes in with 25 million for Mason Mount, I would probably accept it. But I do think there's a quality player there. And I personally, it's not someone I would sell, but if someone comes in for 25 million, you can get him off the wage bill, I'd do it, it's assuming Bruno Fernandes stays. But for me, in our midfield next year, we need Bruno followed by Mount to be the 10s. We need Maino followed by someone else to come in as an 8. That could be Muzakitis, that could be Bergvall. And we need 2 new number 6s. My dream would be Tonali and Elliot Anderson. I don't think we'd get both of them. I think it'd be very hard to get one of them. But we need 6 players in midfield. And Mason Mount and Bruno would be 2. Maino is the 3rd. And then we need 3 new midfield additions. So I think if you let go of Mason Mount, you then have to bring in another midfielder. I know that Cunha can play in the 10 role and could cover Bruno if something happened to Bruno. But I do think we'd probably need another name. But then does anyone want to move to Man United and be the backup to Bruno Fernandes? Because you know that the guy doesn't get injured. You know you're not going to get many minutes. That is the problem. Continuing on. So Dalot could be another name out of Man United. Now, it always feels like we're never going to sell Dalot. We love Dalot. He's a favourite. But Man United probably know that Dalot is a good player, but he's not a great player. And maybe we can cash in on him and upgrade him. Atletico Madrid want Dalot this summer per Facheus. Simeone sees him as a solution to Molina's inconsistency, which is quite funny because Dalot is inconsistent. But Dalot is quite defensively disciplined, which is probably what Simeone would like. Dalot's valued for reliability and ability to free Llorente into midfield. If we use Dalot as a back four right back for defensive stability that, can invert and actually allow your midfielders to stay in midfield, he's quite a good asset to have defensively. It's when we go forward that I'm like, oh my God, Dalot, what are you doing? Oh my. And look, Dalot is better in the back four. He's looked better since Michael Carrick's come in, bar the West Ham game, because he wasn't being asked to stay high and hold the width. He was being asked in the back four. And there's no doubt in my mind that Diogo Dalot would suit what Diego Simeone wants to do. And I think he's a solid right back. And his future could depend on Man United's next manager. But Dalot would be open to a move to Spain. I think if someone's going to come in with 25, 30 million for Dalot, I would look at accepting it. I think Mazraoui's the better of the two. I would look at getting 30 million for Dalot and investing in maybe a more attacking-minded right back. I actually quite like Dalot. Now, that might be an unpopular opinion. I like Dalot as a squad player, not a starter as a squad player. Dalot, for me, is solid. He's always available. He can play multiple positions. He's versatile. He's solid. You're getting 6 out of 10 from Dalot. It's not a 9 out of 10. He ain't a 10 out of 10, but you're getting 6 out of 10, 7 on a good day, 4 on a bad day. But for the most part, he's a solid player to have. He's always available. Defensively, pretty secure. It's going forward where he winds me up. But if you get a good offer in for Dalot, if someone all of a sudden is going to give you like 55 million for Dalot and Mason Mount, you do have to look at it and say, well. Continuing on, I want to talk about Leny Yoro and the news on Leny Yoro, but before I get into that, I thought that this report was relevant from Samuel Luckhurst. So as you know, Jonathan Woodgate and Johnny Evans have come in as part of Michael Carrick's backroom staff, and Woodgate was obviously a defender and is rated internally as a top defensive coach, and obviously we've looked a lot better defensively in those games under Carrick, and he's pulling Maguire and Martinez aside to do pre-match work and heading, but also him and Evans work with Yoro and Heaven on technique. But one of the interesting things that was mentioned by Samuel Luckhurst is there's been a focus on on 2-on-1 defensive drills to sharpen positioning and reactions. What I thought was really interesting is the amount of times that Leny Yoro was having to deal with a 2-on-1 versus West Ham and dealt with it very well says to me that maybe the coaching has done Yoro some favours there, because Yoro, who's obviously had a difficult season this year, was really good when he came on in that West Ham game. His pace was needed and he kept us in the game. And I think for a young player, his confidence has probably been knocked, because Leny Yoro was phenomenal in his first season, absolutely phenomenal in the back end of his first season. He was so good. And then this season, he's had a few knocks. Got dropped, and he's just not maybe looked as confident and as good as he was last year. But we all know there's a player in Leny Yoro, and for him to come off the bench and put in that performance will do his confidence wonders. And it was actually said by MJ Critchley that United do acknowledge Yoro's slight dip in form, but they don't have any internal concern. It's viewed as a normal phase for a young centre-back. His work ethic is highly praised at Carrington. He's been adding extra gym sessions and external training, and he's been working with the same personal coach that Maino and Xerxes worked with. So it's good to know that despite Yoro dropping off a bit this season, and he's not going to get many minutes this season, Yoro, because Leacher and Maguire, if they stay fit, are going to be our centre-back pairing for every game until the end of the season, because we have 1 game a week and we have about 12 games left all season. So the likes of Aiden Heaven and Leny Yoro will not get a lot of minutes because we don't have many games. And if someone does come in, it's most likely to be Dalot. It's one of those situations where he's not going to get minutes. Yoro accepts that. And some people are saying, oh, what's going to happen with Yoro and Heaven? And they know that we've barely got any games this season. They know we'll probably, hopefully be in Europe next season, and then they can have more game time next season. It's not a concern for United. They saw versus West Ham what Leny Yoro can do. They saw last season what Leny Yoro could do. The first 2-3 games this season, I thought Leny Yoro was good. He's had a dip in confidence, a dip in form, and instead of going, I'm not playing, I want to move, I'm unhappy, he's gone, I've had a dip in form, I'm going to work super hard to get back in that team. He understands that it's going to be hard to get minutes because the team isn't losing, and also the fact that we don't have many games, and he got a little opportunity under Carrick, and he's taken it, and the club are not worried about Yoro. In terms of other news stories, we've been linked again to Felix Metscher, this time by Akram Konar, who I don't think is the best source of information, but we have been linked to Metscher a few times, and he did say that United are among clubs monitoring Metscher, and United like him because he's very physically dominant. I don't see him as a successor to Casemiro. I see him as more of a number 8, but I do think Metscher's physical abilities is something that would be useful at Man United. My only concern with that is, again, Metscher has a bit of an injury record, and if we're very thin on the field, we don't want to be buying injury-prone midfielders. And then last but not least, Jordan C1107 via The Athletic did a report on Omar Barada. I'm not going to go into too much of what the report said, but he spoke about how Barada was very highly respected and seen as corporate and low-key, although he does lack the wow factor personality. But in terms of commercial side of football operations, was described as the Lionel Messi of the commercial world, but he now needs to prove himself on the footballing side. Apparently, Omar Barada is known to be elite in football negotiations, elite in commercial side of running football stuff, just probably needs to do more on the footballing side, but he's very good on the commercial side. And just speaks about how he played a role in getting Haaland to City, how he speaks 5 languages and more. But I'm just not really that interested on a story about Omar Barada and what he does amazingly well and what he can improve, because, to be honest, I don't care too much. But it was a good report, and I would recommend checking out The Athletic if you're interested in that kind of stuff. Thank you for watching today's video. See you next time. Bye.